What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a lot of volleyball to talk in the world, as we are down to just 4 teams in the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament, as Texas was the lone team, not a number 1 seed, to pull off a stunner over Stanford. But was it really a stunner? Also, how about Pitt battling back from an 0-2 deficit against Louisville as they advanced to play Nebraska, which wound up beating Arkansas, and then Wisconsin also took care of Oregon. Now also, how about the NCAA Division II Women's Volleyball Tournament? Cal State LA taking down a scrappy West Texas A&M team. But how did the Lady Buffs and the Golden Eagles get to the national championship? Also, we have some NIVC to go over. And how about Indiana Wesleyan completing the perfect season and winning the NAIA Women's Volleyball Tournament? Plus, the Pro Volleyball Federation has their inaugural draft in the books. Who got drafted? And we have some NCAA Women's Volleyball notable transfer news. So hand me a volleyball. Stay up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IESR Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday, wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 224 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be live without you all, the listeners, providing your ears to listen to me on Spreaker, and without IE Sports Radio to provide the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. And also, we have a Facebook page for those that are still interested. All you just have to do is type in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar, like us, and then that's how you're able to follow us on Facebook. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, which has the latest sports news, our blog, our fans of the month, our pages dedicated to each podcast, such as this one, our community forum, our merchandise shop, and we have ourselves our Hall of Fame, which I'm a part of, and which is basically getting underway in terms of its nominations. For the last 9 years, going on 10 years, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports teams around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making iSports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on, and all you have to do is visit planetjerky.net and place your order. And from what I'm hearing is that you still get free orders on $50 or more in terms of shipping. Free shipping on orders of $50 or more. And prices are still slashed through this holiday season. Once again, a huge shout to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. The jerky that's on a whole other planet. And the way you can follow Set Point on social media is on X, at set_point.ie, and on Instagram, at set_point.iesr. You can follow me, Teran Rodriguez, on mainly X, which is where I'm mainly active, at Teran Rodriguez 1. I post a lot of content there, but it's not all volleyball related, but I digress. Alright, without any further delay, let us begin. So, we gotta go over some NCAA women's volleyball, as we had the Sweet 16, or the Regional Semifinals as you kids like to call it. So, let's get on into it. As Mikey Two Guns is in the chat room, he is the host of our Boston show, Our Bleepin' City, he says, here for some set point. And he also said he caught a little bit of the Pitt match the other day. I'm going to take a guess and say that was the Louisville Pitt match, but I don't know. He said Pitt match, but they played twice. Spoiler alert. So anyway, the regional semifinal started off in the Yinzer City with Creighton taking on Louisville, and this was nationally televised on ESPN2, and I was generally impressed from both these teams. Louisville took the opening set 25-21, but then Creighton just dominated the second set, even got to the point where Danny Busboom Kelly unfortunately benched Anna DeBeer and pretty much put in the bench just because you don't want to play your stars in a blowout. So Creighton took the second set 25-14. They had their chances of taking set 3, but unfortunately Louisville just had an answer for them, and they eventually took that third set 25-23. And then Creighton, it looked like they were going to lose in 4 sets, but they caught up and took the fourth set. But it wasn't easy as they actually led late in the set. They led 24-22. Louisville tied it up at 24 apiece, and then Creighton scored the last 2 points. And then in the fifth set, it was 4-3 in favor of Pitt. It looked like it was going to be 4-4, but then there was a challenge by Louisville and ruling that the ball was actually in, and I couldn't see properly. I couldn't see the exact look just because part of the court was cut off, courtesy of ESPN's live bar and whatnot of games. But upon further review, the ball did barely trickle in off the block. It was basically a block from Louisville, and then Louisville challenged it, and then it was actually ruled in. And eventually, Louisville got the point, and they never trailed after that, as they won the fifth set 15-8. Louisville was led by Charity Looper, who had 20 kills, while Anna DeBeer had 19 kills. Cara Cressy had 12 kills, and Aiko Jones also had 9 kills. She actually started the game out pretty good, if you ask me. And then Elena Scott had 27 digs. For Creighton, Nora Sis led the way with 22 kills, while Kiana Schmidt had 12 kills, and Ava Martin had 13 kills. My takeaway for this match is Louisville dug everything and then some, as they had 70 digs to Creighton's 54. Even though Creighton won the blocking battle, and they, I guess, won the serving battle, Louisville just had a little bit more in the tank regarding its defense. Louisville also hit 277, and that fifth set where Louisville won that challenge was kind of what swung the momentum. I know every Creighton fan is basically saying that there was not enough evidence to overturn it, and you couldn't really see all of the court from all the angles, but it is what it is, and sometimes you just have to play through it. And it's not on the refs or the replay system. It's basically you have to find a way to bounce back and just put that lost point behind you. I know and for Creighton, they had an outstanding season, but I'm going to be honest, they would have had to play nearly perfect if they wanted to beat Louisville. But here's the thing, what really had them lost, what really lost them the game. If they take that third set, which eventually they take the fourth set, maybe they don't even need to go 5. Maybe they're winning that one in 4, and then they're advancing to the Elite 8. But the same can be said for Louisville. Let's say Louisville does complete that comeback in the fourth set. Then there's no fifth set, and basically we're moving on to the next match. So all in all for Louisville, it was just, they were the better team. I hate to say it, but Creighton just gave everything that Louisville can handle and then some. And I have to salute Creighton on a fantastic season, but unfortunately they just fell short. Heading down to volleyball land, aka Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, we have Georgia Tech versus Nebraska, and I don't really need to go over this. Nebraska took Georgia Tech to the shed. Through the first 2 sets, it even was said by the play-by-play and color commentators that Georgia Tech was not playing their best, and it's sad because this was kind of expected. The first 2 sets were 25-11 and 25-16 won by Nebraska. Georgia Tech would have needed to play perfect volleyball. They would have needed to hit a perfect 1,000. They would have needed to dig everything. They would have needed Bianca Bertolino to go full Julia Bergman and Mariana Brambilla in order to win that one. But unfortunately, they didn't really show up to the party until set 3. And that's no disrespect to Georgia Tech, but you're facing the number 1 overall seed in Nebraska, and you're just coming off of an emotional 5-set road win over Florida. So, of course, there was kind of going to be a little bit of a letdown, as Merritt Beeson led the way with 11 kills. She hit .435. Allie Batenhorst had 10 kills. Nebraska as a team hit .326, while they held Georgia Tech to only 19 in terms of the hitting percentage. They also outblocked them 11-2. The digs were kind of close, but Nebraska won that category. I will give Georgia Tech a little bit of an edge on the serving category, but not by too much. Georgia Tech was led by Tamara Otene, who had 9 kills, while Bianca Bertolino had 8 kills, but that's kind of where the buck stops in terms of the kill department. For Georgia Tech, my takeaway is this: there's no shame in losing to Nebraska, and it's so tough to win at the Bob Devaney Center. So I salute Georgia Tech on another great season, but unfortunately, they just needed to play perfect in order to beat Nebraska, because, again, Nebraska's the number 1 overall seed, and they were eating everybody for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Circling the wagons back to the Yinzer City, we have Washington State versus Pitt, and my takeaway for this is Pitt is the real deal. Not saying that Washington State wasn't good, but Pitt was just on one in terms of its offense, in terms of its defense, in terms of everything. Pitt swept Washington State 25-20, 25-13, and 25-16, as after the first set, Pittsburgh kicked it into maximum turbo and nitro overdrive, as Olivia Babcock led the way with 15 kills. She hit .500. She also had 4 service aces. Tori Stafford had 10 kills, and reminder to everybody that these two are only freshmen. That's the scary thing about Pitt, because those two are back for 3 more years. Emma Monks also had 7 kills, as Pitt hit .425 while holding Washington State to 141. Iman Isanovich had 8 kills, while Magda Yelasheva had 7 kills, as well as Pia Timmer. But here's where Washington State got outdone in every category. They had 4 service aces to Pitt's 8. They had only 23 digs to Pitt's 36. And then in terms of blocks, they only had 4 blocks as a team compared to Pitt's 12.5. That's basically a recipe for disaster. And Pitt had no set where they hit under 300 or under 310. So basically, Washington State just ran into a woodshed. And now the biggest question for Washington State is, will they be back? I will say they will. Obviously, they're not going to have a conference just because, well, the Pac-12 is basically extinct after this season. And I hate to basically say that, but honestly, it is. It really is, and it's sadly disappointing. But for Washington State, I think they'll be back. Katie Ryan is back. Argentina is back next season. And I'm sure they've got like a bunch of other players. They do lose out on Yelasheva and Isanovich and Carly Basham, but I think they'll be just fine. They'll also lose out on Julia Norval, who is key in terms of their serving. But overall, it was still a successful season, but I will say this: Washington State has some questions to answer. The first being, where are they going to come regarding their conference? Circling back to the Bob Devaney Center in Lincoln, Nebraska, we have this SEC matchup of Arkansas versus Kentucky. On paper, everyone probably picked Kentucky just because they've kind of owned the series against Arkansas, but Arkansas did surprise everybody for the better, and they really hung tough with Kentucky. The first set, Kentucky won 25-22, albeit they needed 6 set points. Arkansas won the second set 25-22. Then they won the third set 25-15. Then Kentucky winced. I wouldn't say winced, but they inched past Arkansas in that fourth set 25-22. And then Arkansas jumped out to an early 4-0 lead and never looked back as they took the fifth set 15-10. And let me tell you how big this win is for Arkansas. The win was so big, it was their first win over Kentucky since 2012. And with the win, they advanced to their first ever Elite Eight, which is downright impressive. And Arkansas, I just got to say, Jill Gillen was her in that match. 20 kills. She only had 2 hitting errors. She hit .391. And remember, Jill Gillen does not crack 6 feet. She's like 5'7", and she's getting kills against some of those big-time trees on the other teams. Maggie Cartwright also chipped in 15 kills, while Taylor Head also had 13 kills. Sonia Petties also chipped in 8 kills. And Arkansas outblocked Kentucky 10-9. They got dug, but it was only by 5. They won the serve battle as they had 8 aces to Kentucky's 5 and missed 3 less serves than Kentucky did. And also Arkansas hit .257 and held Kentucky to only a .184 hang percentage. For the Wildcats, Brooklyn DeLay led the way with 16 kills, while Aaron Lamb had 15 kills, while Azani Teeler had 12 kills, Reagan Rutherford had 11 kills, and Elise Goetzinger had 9 kills. So my takeaway for Kentucky is this. I was very surprised they just did not look like themselves. Again, the commentators, I want to say it was like Katie George and Courtney Lyle, they were saying that Kentucky just looks out of it in sorts, and honestly, they did. They didn't look like themselves. The first set, they needed 6 set points to close it out. And then the second and third set, they just were not themselves. And then the fourth set, they survived a little bit of a scare, but they took the fourth set to force the fifth. And then they just kind of got boat raced in that fifth set. So for Kentucky, my thing is they had almost 5 players with 10 or more kills. Normally when you have those type of numbers, you're winning matches 95% of the time. Unfortunately for Kentucky, their players did not perform at the highest level. Some of their players weren't really efficient with their hitting percentage. Aaron Lamb and Azani Teeler were the lone exceptions, as Brooklyn DeLay hit 134, Elise Goetzinger hit 74, and Reagan Rutherford hit 138. I kind of expected a little bit better from Kentucky, but as I've been saying for the past 3 episodes or so, it's tough to beat a team 3 times in one season, and this was that instance that Arkansas was able to upend Kentucky. Heading down to Madison in the Wisconsin Fieldhouse, or as one of the friends of Set Point, Cheese Trader, would call it, the Dungeon, we have Penn State and Wisconsin televised on ESPN2, and this matchup was fairly good, but it was to be expected as Wisconsin beat Penn State in 4, 25-11. They just blew the doors off of Penn State in that one. Then they lost the second set 30-28. That's credit to Penn State's scrappiness. But then Wisconsin just Wisconsin won the third set 25-12. And eventually Wisconsin, they didn't trail, though there were 4 ties, but they wound up winning the fourth set 25-18 en route to advancing to the Final Four. Wisconsin was led by Sarah Franklin, who had 15 kills, while Timmy Thomas Ilara, 11 kills, Devin Robinson and Carter Booth both having 10 kills. My takeaway for Wisconsin is this: when they have when they have a lot of efficient players offensively, they are tough to stop. But that's not where it stops there. But wait, there's more. Wisconsin had 17 blocks compared to Penn State's 4. That's not going to really win you a whole lot of games if you're Penn State. And also, Penn State only had 1 service ace, even though Wisconsin only had 2. But regardless, Penn State was just pretty much outdone in almost every category. The digs were neck and neck, with Penn State only being outdug by 1. And Penn State hit only 82, as Jess Murzik had 15 kills and hit .226, while Zoe Weatherington added 12 kills and Cameron Hanna added 9 kills. The good news is for Penn State is that they get Jess Mruzek and Cameron Hanna back as for one more season, which is definitely a good thing. But now you have to wonder, what are they going to do without Mac Pedraza? That was kind of their leader right there in terms of the offense. But it is what it is, and Penn State should be back on this stage, at least in the Sweet 16. They knew they were going to expect an uphill climb, and especially with Anna Smrek, who didn't even crack double digits. She had 7 kills, I should mention, though, and Caroline Crawford had 8 and 10 blocks. So when you're facing a team like Wisconsin, kills are going to be tough to come by. Heading down to Northern California for the Stanford Regional, we had Tennessee and Texas, and if you watched this, I envy you, but I will just say this one was the longest match of the entire tournament, with reviews and with reviews, delays, and injuries, and everything. After Texas took the first set 25-19, doom and gloom was kind of nearing for Tennessee. Despite leading, they did lose their libero. I'm going to probably butcher her name, but Yelianas Torres, as she hurt her shoulder diving for the ball. And even though she actually served up a service ace, she had to go to the bench because she just could not put any more pressure on that shoulder, and she was eventually knocked out for the game, which is a complete bummer right there. As I think Mackenzie Plant took over, and she had 15 digs, which was good. Tennessee took the second set 25-20, and Tennessee took the third set 25-23. They actually led 23-20 in set 4, but then Texas tied it up at 23-23 because that's what champions do. And then Tennessee actually had match point at 24-23, but then Texas wound up scoring the last 3 points to take set 4, 26-24. And then in set 5, Texas eventually led 14-10. It was a neck-and-neck battle throughout most of that 5th set, with Texas eventually, like I said, leading 14-10. But then Tennessee tied it up at 14 apiece, but then Tennessee wound up winning the last 2 points, and unfortunately for Tennessee, they hit the ball long, no touch was called, and that's how Tennessee's season ended. The Lady Vols were led by Morgan Fingal, who had 24 kills, while Janasia Moore had 13 kills, Raven Chase, 12 kills, and Erica Levitt, 10 kills. My takeaway for the Lady Vols is this: no matter what happens, they are the most resilient and scrappiest team of the tournament. There's nothing more that needs to be said. They gave it their all. They lost their libero, and they pushed the national champions to 5. But I will say, you actually have to close out the sets that you are leading in if you want to advance to that Final Four. And when you have a match point opportunity, you have to basically take advantage of that opportunity. But they were not slowing down Maddie Skinner, who had 26 kills. She had 328 for Texas. Jenna Wenas had 11 kills, while Asia O'Neal had 10 kills. Molly Phillips also chipped in 9 kills. My biggest takeaway for Texas is this: you never want to underestimate the heart of a champion, and it got really dicey in the match, I will say, but I was very, very impressed by Texas's resilience. I really thought we were going to get an upset. Some were saying that Tennessee was going to pull the upset against Texas, and it was looking like it, but then in the back of my mind, I was thinking Texas is not going to let their season end like this. It's just not going to. But I will salute Tennessee for everything that they did. It's one of the worst ways to go out on your own hands. Well, even though the match should have ended a little bit earlier, just because Tennessee was supposedly called for a net violation, which wasn't called because it was overridden by a back row attacker violation by Texas in the climax of that 5th set where Tennessee was making the comeback. But all in all, that's how Texas wound up winning. Circling back to Wisconsin and taking our time travel machine back to the Wisconsin Fieldhouse, we had Purdue versus Oregon, and I'm just going to say this: choosing Purdue to upset Oregon was the worst thing I could have ever done. I totally forgot that Purdue is still a little bit on the young side, with Eva Hudson and Chloe Chicoine being a sophomore and freshman respectively. And then Raven Colvin is also still only a sophomore, and most of their team, and then they also have a freshman setter, and their only upperclassman, to my knowledge, is Maddie Skimmerhorn, which is unfortunate, and Oregon is kind of the opposite. They kind of have a lot of veterans on their team, like Cara McGee, Gabby Gonzalez, Georgia Murphy, Hannah Pukas. Even though Mimi Collier is only a sophomore, she she was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, and she basically was a talent unmatched last season for Oregon. Regardless, Oregon swept Purdue 25-14, 25-19, and 29-17, or 29-27. As my takeaway for Purdue is this: Purdue actually had chances to win sets. In set 2, they were up 18-5 or 18-15, only to give up a 10-1 run to end the set. That's unacceptable right there. I know Oregon's a good team. I know Oregon runs a fast offense. I know they serve tough. But you have to close out these sets. And I know a 3-point lead is basically not the safest lead, but still, you cannot allow a team to cook like that. And they let Oregon cook. Then in set number 3, Purdue did everything they could to stay alive, except get a set point opportunity late in the set. Every time Oregon had match point, Purdue did everything they could to try to tie it up. But eventually, Oregon was able to close out the match with 2 straight points. There were 17 ties in that third set, as Oregon was led by Mimi Collier and Morgan Lewis, who had 14 kills apiece. Lewis also hit 462. Gabby Gonzalez had 10 kills. She hit 429. Carson Bacon also added 7 kills. She hit 778, as Oregon as a team hit 364. Purdue only hit 214, as Eva Hudson led the way with 12 kills. Chloe Chicoine, 10 kills, and Lourdes Myers had 7 kills. It would have been also great to have Raven Colvin involved more in the offense, as she only had 4 kills. But sometimes it's just not your night, and Purdue not only got outdone offensively, they got outdone in blocking, as they were outblocked 7-4, they were outdug 48-39, and they were outaced 5-1. And even though Oregon missed one more serve than them, Oregon, in my mind, won the serving battle. And circling back to Northern California for the last Stanford regional match, we had Arizona State versus Stanford, and I envy the people on the East Coast that stayed up to watch this match, just because I was wired after watching all the volleyball, after watching Tennessee and Texas, and I wasn't even remotely close to being tired. But in this match against Stanford and Arizona State took the first set 25-22, but then Stanford bounced back and took it 25-21. Then they took the third set 25-20, and then eventually the fourth set 25-21, en route to winning the match. Stanford was led by Kendall Kipp, who had 13 kills, while Elia Rubin had 19 kills. She hit 341. Katie Baird also chipped in 10 kills. As Stanford hit 217, they also outdug Arizona State 70-62, and they barely outblocked them 12-10. Service aces were in favor of Stanford as well. They won the serve battle altogether, as they had 7 aces to Arizona State's 5, and they missed 1 fewer serve. For Arizona State, Marta Levinska had 17 kills, while Jelly Sear had 16 kills. But that's kind of where the buck stopped, as Roberta Rebello was their next kill leader after that, as she had 5 kills. As my takeaway for Arizona State is this: it's great that Jelly Sear was involved, but you kind of need to have that third option. One of the reasons why Stanford was so successful is because they could basically rave about Kendall Kipp all they want. Everyone could rave about Kendall Kipp all they want. But when they get Elia Rubin involved, Katie Baird involved, McKenna Vicini involved, Sammy Francis involved, it just makes Stanford a much better team. It also helps that they have a really good setter in Cammie Minor. Not saying that Shannon Shields did not do great. She had 4 kills to go along with 38 assists, but Stanford just had more options, and Kendall Kipp was not losing this one. All right, that is that for the Sweet 16, aka the Regional Semifinals. And Mikey Two Guns popped into the chat room. He said, yes, it was the 5-set match that he watched from Pitt, which was indeed Louisville and Pitt. And before I continue on, I got to say hello to Mike Pat in the chat room. He said, good evening, Teran. Good evening to you too, sir. All right, for Pitt Louisville, I will just say I'm glad we got this regional final. No offense to Creighton, and really no offense to them, but there's nothing better than 2 conference rivals squaring off against one another when the stakes are high and when it's win or go home in the NCAA tournament. For Pitt, I basically said I didn't pick an upset as I had all of the number 1 seeds advancing to the Final Four. Yes, go ahead and judge me, say I'm boring and whatnot, but still. But I did also say that if there was one team that was bound to pull an upset, it was Louisville over Pitt. And through 2 sets, it looked like Louisville was going to do that as Iko Jones came out swinging. And then eventually, Louisville was up 2-0. They won the first set 25-23, and then they wound up winning the second set 25-20. As I want to say Pitt was up 18-15 in set 2, and then Louisville eventually turned the tables. Regardless, what happened after set 2 was basically the turning point of the match as Pitt walloped Louisville in set 3, 25-16, as Olivia Babcock was just blasting her serves. And it wasn't just her. Valeria Vasquez-Gomez also had 4 aces. And then Louisville dropped the 4th set to Pitt as Pitt took it 25-19. And then the 5th set. Does everyone here remember that Louisville took the 5th set against Pitt last year in the national semifinals 15-2? Well, Pitt kind of paid Louisville back for that and then some, as Pitt jumped out to an early lead. They went up 8-2 at the side switch, and they just never looked back as they took the 5th set 15-7, completing the reverse sweep and punching their ticket back to the national semifinals for the 3rd straight year, as the Panthers were led by Tori Stafford, who had 18 kills. She hit .378 and had 11 digs. Olivia Babcock had 16 kills. Emma Monks had 8 kills, as well as Valeria Vasquez-Gomez to go along with 8 digs. And like I said, Vasquez-Gomez had 4 service aces as well. And my takeaway for Pitt is I was very impressed that they progressively got better with each set. They really improved their game. It wasn't just in one category. It wasn't just offense, but it was in serving. It was in defense. They just really improved, and they didn't panic after they were down 0-2 because they were in this position in the regular season when they were at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. And they eventually reverse swept Louisville that match. Now they reverse sweep Louisville on the big stage yet again, but this time a trip to the Final Four was on the line, and Pitt closed the deal. Louisville was led by PK Kong and Anna DeBeer, who both had 13 kills, while Cara Cressy and Iko Jones both had 9 kills, and Charity Looper had 8 kills. My takeaway for Louisville is this. This is probably the most disappointing way to lose and see your season end, and I was not impressed by Louisville. Yes, I understand that rivalry matches or in-conference matches or conference rival matches are basically all bets are off, but when you're up 2-0, you gotta find ways to play like you did in the first 2 sets. They just got dominated throughout the rest of the match. I know set 4 they tried to find some resilience to Pitt, but Pitt was not having it. They were just it in that match. Pitt was it throughout after set number 2. And they got outdug 51-38. The blocking was good as Pitt outblocked them 14-12, which wasn't bad, but the serving was what really killed Louisville. Louisville had 16 service errors and only had 5 aces, while Pitt had 11 service aces and only 11 service errors. Basically, they got dominated in the serve battle. They also allowed Pitt to hit .286. After set number 2, Pitt hit a blistering .560, and even though Pitt hit 43 in set number 4, they basically had everything going their way, as the blocking was great, serving was great, defense overall was great, and Louisville was just not Louisville. Louisville was forced into too many mistakes. Charity Looper, I kind of expected a better game from her, and it sucks because I think Charity Looper is a fantastic player, but unfortunately this was just not her game, and something Pitt also did really well was that they kept the ball away from Elena Scott, as she only had 10 digs. That is big time right there, as Emmy Klika and Tori Stafford, like I mentioned earlier, they had 11 digs for Pitt as they advanced to the national semifinals. Jumping over to the Volleyball State in Nebraska and the Bob Devaney Center in Lincoln, we have Arkansas versus Nebraska, and this kind of was expected, except Arkansas threw everything they had at Nebraska and then some. Arkansas led throughout the entirety of set 1. They led 21-16 in set 1. And then Nebraska closed out on a 10-3 run to taking set number 1, 26-24. That was the turning point of the match, as the second set, Nebraska blew the doors off of Arkansas 25-14. And I was wondering if Nebraska was ever going to get challenged up to that point in the NCAA tournament, or if they were going to finally get challenged in the Final Four. They finally got challenged in set 3 as Arkansas handed Nebraska their first lost set of the tournament, winning set 3 25-21. And then set 4, Arkansas did everything they could to try to keep pace with Nebraska. They were up 20-18, but then Nebraska reeled off 3 straight, and Arkansas never led. And even though Arkansas got within 1, unfortunately for them, they missed a serve long. And that is the worst way to end your season, as I feel horrible for Arkansas. Jill Gillen did not have her best game. She had 14 kills, but she only hit 70. But she was taking on a much taller team in Nebraska. When you compare that to Kentucky or the previous opponents, it's just no contest. Taylor Head also had 10 kills, but she hit 0 for the match, as she had 10 hitting errors. Maggie Cartwright also had 11 kills, and Sonia Pettis also had 9 kills. Arkansas only hit 100, despite holding Nebraska to under 200, as Nebraska hit 194. Merritt Beeson had 19 kills. She almost had a triple-double, as she also had 11 digs and 8 blocks, which is downright impressive. Harper Murray also had 15 kills. When they're in the back row, or when they're in the same rotation, Nebraska is so tough to pretty much beat offensively. Allie Batenhorst also had 9 kills. Andy Jackson also had 7 kills. My takeaway for Nebraska is this. I'm glad they finally got challenged, because if they had gone on to the semifinals and they were just breezed through everybody, I would have wondered if they would have peaked a little too early. I know Nebraska is the juggernaut of this tournament, and yes, they were my pick to win the entire tournament. But you have to have some sort of adversity. A little adversity never hurts any team, especially in the NCAA tournament. And I'm glad Arkansas made Nebraska sweat in terms of that match altogether. Also, I will say Fitzgerald Fieldhouse and the Bob Devaney Center were rocking. Oh, also one more thing. Nebraska completed a perfect run at the Bob Devaney Center, which is downright impressive. But, again, it's never easy to win at the Bob Devaney Center. The closest team to basically try to beat Nebraska was Wisconsin, and that one was an all-out thriller. Next up, we head down to the Cheese Land for Wisconsin-Oregon, and this was kind of closer than the match dictated, despite what set 4 says, as Wisconsin won the first 2 sets, 25-22, even though they kind of needed to sweat it out a little in set number 2. Oregon had their opportunities to tie the matchup at 1-1, but Wisconsin wound up taking the second set. Then in set number 3, Oregon was up throughout a majority of that set, but Wisconsin, to their credit, tied it up. They eventually tied it up at 23 apiece, but then Oregon was able to come up big, save their season, or keep it alive at the very least, win it 27-25, and it was 8-8 in set 4. But then Wisconsin goes on an 8-0 run to double their lead up to 8-6 or 16-8 in the fourth set, and they never looked back. And just like the Arkansas-Nebraska match, Oregon lost off of a missed serve. And also, I should also mention that if you saw the live broadcast on ESPNU or ESPN Plus, there were a lot of jaw-dropping highlights defensively. Wisconsin was led by Sarah Franklin, who had 20 kills, while Temi Thomas-Ailara had 11 kills, Anna Smrek had 10 kills, and Devin Robinson had 9 kills. If those players are close to double digits or are in double digits in terms of kills, Wisconsin's a tough team to beat. Wisconsin also hit 313 compared to Oregon's 207. They also had 16 blocks compared to Oregon's 4. That's basically going to win you some matches. Though I will give Oregon the edge in serves because they were serving really tough. And Oregon also outdug Wisconsin 73-70 as the Ducks were led by Mimi Collier, who also had 20 kills, but she also hit 121. still a pretty good night for her. Morgan Lewis also had 11 kills, while Hannah Pukas had 9 kills. Keep in mind she's a setter. She almost had a triple-double, and she also had 13 digs to go along with 49 assists. Cara McGee, Gabby Gonzalez, and Carson Bacon all had 8 kills apiece. So my takeaway for Oregon is this. They did everything they could, and this was an interesting match up until that fourth set where Oregon went on that 8-0 run and basically separated themselves from the pack. But Oregon did have a fantastic season. My only big question is, what are they going to do next year? They lose a lot to graduation. They lose Carson Bacon, Hannah Pukas, Cara McGee, Gabby Gonzalez, Georgia Murphy, the libero. They have a lot of Morgan Lewis. I should also mention they lose her as well. So for Oregon, this was kind of their best chance to at least make it to the Final Four, if not win the national championship. But unfortunately, they ran into a red-hot Wisconsin team. They actually ran into a brick wall, literally, in this match. So for me, it's also so tough to win at the Dungeon, a.k.a. Wisconsin Fieldhouse. Speaking of which, Wisconsin also completed a perfect run at the Wisconsin Fieldhouse. And one more shout-out. I have to give a shout-out to former set point guest Emily Eamon, as she did an outstanding job, along with Sam Gore, in the broadcast of all of the matches that they did. They did the Wisconsin-Penn State match, they did the Oregon-Purdue match, and they did the Wisconsin-Oregon match in the regional final. So I have to give a huge shout-out to Emily Eamon, former set point guest, for all the work that she's done. And hopefully one day I will be as much of the golden standard in volleyball as she is. And like Mark Rosen said, Emily Eamon is good for volleyball. She's good for volleyball. Lastly, we had the most atmospheric regional final of the 4, and that was Stanford and Texas. And I will just give another set point shout out to Daniel Gilman. He actually said that Stanford is one of the more easier places to win at in terms of volleyball. I didn't want to believe it at first. I thought he was yanking everyone's chain. Though I will say, Louisville had only 2,879 in attendance. And then the Bob Devaney Center had 8,713. And then we don't know the actual number for Oregon, Wisconsin, because that's what it doesn't say on the stat sheet. But it wasn't as atmospheric as the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. It wasn't as atmospheric as the Bob Devaney Center. It wasn't as atmospheric as Wisconsin Fieldhouse. So I just gotta say, I do have a little bit of a gripe with that, and it's not just me saying that. I wish there were more. It was more atmospheric. I wish there were it was filled with no seats, or no seats covered, no empty seats. You know what I mean. But to the Texas-Stanford match, Texas won the first match 25-16, as they never trailed in that one. Though Stanford returned the favor by taking the second set 25-15. Then Texas kind of kicked it into high gear, winning that third set 25-19. And despite a little bit of a challenge in that fourth set, Texas took the fourth set 25-22. I kind of wanted a fifth set between these two to end off the Elite Eight, but it is what it is, as Texas wound up winning the match in 4 sets. Not one quarterfinal was decided via a sweep, which is good. That was the case last year, as Texas was led by Maddie Skinner, who had 24 kills. She almost had half the kills as the entire team had, as she also hit 383. Asia O'Neal also had 10 kills, and she hit 474. Jenna Wenas was the next closest one, as she had 6 kills. My takeaway for Texas is this. If Maddie Skinner plays like that, then Texas is not going to be losing anything. And they are fortunate to have Maddie Skinner. And also got to give her a little bit of a shout-out, because I also interviewed her in the past, all the way back in August. So kind of got to give a little bit of a shout to friend of the show, Maddie Skinner. Also got to give a shout out to Ella Swindle, only a freshman setter. She is setting Texas up for greater heights. She had 41 assists and 11 digs and 4 blocks. Emma Halter also has kind of come into her own at the libero position as she had 13 digs. Maddie Skinner also was kind of battling an injured, I want to say it was an injured hand, as her hand was taped up after that Tennessee match. But who could blame her, because she literally had to carry the team. Aaliyah Rubin led Stanford with 17 kills. She had 333. Kendall Kipp had 16 kills, and Katie Baird had 14 kills. My takeaway for Stanford is this. This was not their best match. The thing that really killed them, however, was getting blocked. They only had 3 blocks as a team, and Texas as a team had 12 and a half. That's not going to really win you a whole lot of matches. I admit they did outdig Texas by 3, but they also missed 14 serves. They had double the service errors as Texas did, and they allowed Texas to hit 342, courtesy of only having 3 blocks as a team. Also, Kendall Kipp was not 100% as her wrist was clearly taped up as well following the Arizona State match, and that was big right there. I knew Kendall Kipp wasn't her true explosive self. You gotta remember, I covered Kendall Kipp all the way back in her high school days back at Corona Del Mar. And unfortunately, she was not the explosive volleyball player that she was back in the previous matches. So it's unfortunate that Stanford lost. They were actually my pick to go to the national championship. Yeah, thanks, Stanford. But I will say to Texas, I apologize. I'm sorry. I wasn't really familiar with your game. I didn't think that you would break down the brick wall that is Stanford. Because Stanford is more often than not a good blocking team, but they just looked so non-existent. It also kind of felt like that it was more of a Texas home game. Nothing against the Maples Pavilion, but it just seemed so less atmospheric than the Pittsburgh, Nebraska, and Wisconsin regional final. So for Stanford, it was kind of disappointing in terms of the end of their season. I at least would have liked to have seen a full packed house. I'm not trying to get someone on Stanford's marketing team fired, but when you were hosting the Elite Eight and your season's kind of on the line and it's basically sink or swim, you got to have a full house with no empty seats. And that was not what Stanford did. All right, but that is that for all of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Regional Finals. We'll be circling the wagons back to NCAA Women's Volleyball in the Division I tournament a little bit later. But let's go over some NIVC Women's Volleyball action as, well, we're down to 2 teams. We are down to just 2 teams. But jumping back to the Great 8, Wichita State swept Drake, which was kind of impressive if you ask me. Then Montana State outlasted Wyoming, which I thought was a very great match right there. And then South Florida swept Georgia Southern. Kind of expected, even though Georgia Southern was the host. And then UTEP took down Clemson in 4. Now that was kind of a surprise right there, just because Power 5 conference versus non-Power 5 conference. But UTEP deserves a lot of credit. They also were the one team that almost beat Western Kentucky, but that was not the case, as UTEP beat Clemson in 4, which I thought, as you all remember, I said I think Clemson definitely has a shot at winning the NIVC, and they would be my pick to win it all. But, unfortunately, I just don't have enough time to fully cover the NIVC. Then in the Fab Four, yes, that's the actual vernacular of the NIVC. It's not called the Final Four, it's called the Fab Four. Wichita State swept Montana State, and UTEP swept South Florida, as Wichita State was the host in that semifinal, and then UTEP was also the host in that semifinal. So it's down to just 2 teams, Wichita State and UTEP, as UTEP is the host team, which is pretty cool if you ask me. So the final of the NIVC is tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time. I'm 99% certain it's going to be on ESPN+. If it's not on ESPN+, we riot. But something I would like to see, and this is what I've been hearing in terms of volleyball murmurs and whispers, they are thinking of moving the NIVC to the same weekend as the same weekend and same venue as the national championship. So take, for example, the NIVC would be moved to probably Saturday, because remember, the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division I Championship is moved to Sunday as opposed to playing on Saturdays in years past. And that could be something worth noting, and I could definitely see that happening. I would totally like that. Have the NIVC one weekend, and then have the national championship, or have the NIVC on one day, on Saturday, and then have the national championship on Sunday. It would definitely increase viewership. I think it would be an excellent idea. And believe it or not, South Florida was one of the teams in the Fab Four. Unfortunately, they fell, like I said, to UTEP in straight sets. It would have been pretty impressive to see South Florida in the national, or in the NIVC, which again raises the question: should we have the NIVC in the same gymnasium as the national championship? Not on the same day, but in the same gymnasium on the same weekend. Basically, we'd be getting maybe even have the NIVC semifinals on like Tuesday. But then people have to fly in and fly out, and I don't think that's enough time to like get the teams that are partaking in the NIVC over to said venue. So, yeah. I think having the NIVC championship on the same weekend as the Final Four and the national championship would just as suffice. And maybe have that on Saturday, and then give everybody Friday off to like do what they need to do, tour the city, and enjoy the AVCA convention, which sadly I will not be going to. More on that later. But just a little food for thought right there. I mean, I know the NIVC isn't the same as winning the national championship, but it's still postseason volleyball. It's still meaningful volleyball. And I would totally be down to be seeing more teams partake in the NIVC. And also, it's still hardware that you're winning. You're not giving the trophy back. You're not giving the banners back or anything of that sort. I think it's pretty cool to play postseason volleyball, especially if you're a senior-heavy team and you want to give your players one last hurrah. And if you're hosting, then that's going to draw more fans and, heck, maybe even more recruits, just because they're going to be able to look at your team and say, hey, I saw this team in the NIVC. Now, it wasn't as glamorous as the NCAA tournament, but they actually have a chance to win this tournament as opposed to getting bounced by a la a Nebraska or a Wisconsin or a Stanford or a Texas or an Oregon or whatnot. So, just food for thought right there. That's all I kind of want to really go over in that regard. As, again, the NIVC Championship is tomorrow. As of this recording, this is being recorded on Monday, remember. It's tomorrow being Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm certain it's going to be on ESPN+. Alright, but that's going to do it for the first part of the show. We're going to take ourselves a quick break. When we come back, got some NCAA Division II volleyball to recap. We also have some NAIA volleyball to recap in the semifinals and finals. And the Division II had their final 8. We have some NCAA women's volleyball notable transfer news. And then we also have the Pro Volleyball Federation draft to go over. And then also we have the Final 4 of the NCAA Division I women's volleyball tournament to go over. So keep it locked here. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports, because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and centers. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Check out all of our amazing shows, such as Sin City Sports, Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick, which goes on approximately 1 hour before my show. Got off to a little bit of a slow start, but he finished definitely strong, as we are back with the second half of Set Point. So let's go over some NCAA or NAIA volleyball action, as that was what happened before the NCAA Division II Final 8. And yes, that is the correct vernacular. So I kind of talked about Northwestern of Iowa defeating Viterbo in Sioux City, Iowa, as Northwestern wound up winning in 4 sets, 25-22, 25-17, 25-27, and 25-19. For the most part, they seem to have control over this match, especially in that second set. Viterbo, I give them a lot of credit. They kind of came alive, but Northwestern slammed the door on them, as Northwestern was led by Jaslyn Dehaan, who had 19 kills, Macy Vant Hull had 12 kills, and Allison Dexter had 10 kills. Northwestern out-hit Viterbo 220-135, and even though they got outdug, they outblocked them 13-11. And also, they won the service battle barely, as they had 5 aces to 4 aces from Viterbo, and had 1 fewer service error. Viterbo was led by Kenzie Winker, who had 17 kills, as well as Martina McGrath. She also had 17 kills. Grace Rode had 14 kills, and she also had 11 digs. Kennedy McCabe had 24 digs, and then Winker also added 13 digs. Northwestern was the number 1 overall seed, so it wasn't ultimately surprising. I give Viterbo a lot of credit, but unfortunately for them, they just fell short, and they kind of just ran out of gas in that 4th set. But when you're facing the number 1 seed, you gotta play pretty much perfect volleyball. And then as for the other semifinal, we had Indiana Wesleyan taking on Eastern Oregon. So going into this tournament, Indiana Wesleyan didn't have a match that went 5 sets. Indiana Wesleyan had to go 5 in pool play. They wound up winning that one. They took down... Oh no, I'm blanking on the previous team that they beat, but it was the previous reigning champion that they took down. But regardless, Indiana Wesleyan was undefeated. However, they kind of had a little bit of an issue with Eastern Oregon. They nearly took the first set 25-23, even though they never trailed. And then Eastern Oregon took the second set 25-20. And then after that second set, Indiana Wesleyan really cranked it up to 11 as they took the third set 25-14 and the fourth set 25-19. They never trailed in the third and fourth set as Indiana Wesleyan was led by Eva Gildersma, who had 17 kills, while Marissa Mullins added 13 kills and Marta Zambetti had 11 kills. Also need to make note that Martina DeMarchi had 9 kills. Indiana Wesleyan hit 211, but they held Eastern Oregon to only 161. Indiana Wesleyan also had 92 digs compared to Eastern Oregon's 81. That is quite a bit. And even though they got outblocked by 1, they held Eastern Oregon to 0 service aces, and they only missed 2 serves altogether. So Indiana Wesleyan just really rebounded. And it was Jamestown. I knew it was James something. It wasn't James Madison. Jamestown was the team that Indiana Wesleyan beat in the quarterfinals. And Indiana University Kokomo was the team that they went 5 sets in pool play with. Eastern Oregon was led by Ashton Houghton and Kira Vaughn, who both had 13 kills, while Sadie Williams had 12 kills. Alexis McMurtry and Haley Aratola both had 20 digs. They ran... Now, I didn't really see this match just because I was actually out of town. I didn't really see all of this match, but Eastern Oregon wound up running 3 setters. They all had 10 plus digs, which is pretty cool. But Eastern Oregon just fell short. I've never seen a match with 3 setters. Maybe one of them got hurt, but they all played 4 sets, so interesting. By the way, I should mention that Indiana Wesleyan was the number 2 seed. Yes, they were the number 2 seed, even though they were undefeated. Yeah, go figure. And now for the national championship match, or in the NAIA, as Indiana Wesleyan, the 2 seed, took on Northwestern of Iowa in the final. As Northwestern took the opening set 25-20, then Indiana Wesleyan rebounded and took that second set by that same score. Then Northwestern hammered Indiana Wesleyan in the third set 25-13. Then Indiana Wesleyan, I think they were down like 13-9 or 13-8, and then they bounced back to take the fourth set 25-17. And then the fifth set, Indiana Wesleyan, it was tight early on, but then Indiana Wesleyan just created the separation that they needed in the middle of the set, and they eventually took the fifth set 15-10, en route to capping off their national championship season, which was absolutely amazing. Indiana Wiesland had 4 different players with double-digit kills, as Eva Joldersma had 25 kills, Marissa Mullins, 15 kills, Marta Zambetti, 13 kills, and Martina DeMarchi, 10 kills. Indiana Wiesland hit 270. Both teams hit high hitting percentage. They had Indiana Wiesland 270, Northwestern 261. Both teams also had 6 service aces. The blocks were fairly even as well, as Northwestern outblocked them 8-7. They also outdug them by 1. Northwestern was led by Jaslyn DeHaan, who had 25 kills, while Allison Dexter had 20 kills. And then Savone Sturk added 8 kills, which, oh my goodness. So Indiana Wiesland completed their undefeated season, which they are the 4th team this NCAA women's volleyball calendar year to complete a undefeated season. You also got to add in the NJCAA and then the NCAA Division III. When I said NJCAA, I mean Division. I want to say it was like Division II and Division III. Yeah. David Crooks also popped in the chat room. He said, "What's good?" And Adam Kark said, "How are you undefeated and only the number 2 seed? Luck of the draw?" Probably. I guess the committee saw something that they didn't like in terms of Indiana Wiesland as opposed to Northwestern of Iowa. Could be strength of schedule and whatnot, so there's that. So that's that for NAIA volleyball. Jumping over to some NCAA Division II women's volleyball. So I was keeping tabs on this as well as watching the volleyball action on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus on Thursday, and Cal State LA took on Wayne State of Nebraska. This was the final 8, and this was the 3 seed Wayne State taking on the 6 seed Cal State LA. Now, y'all need to remember that Cal State LA was not ranked in the AVCA coaches polls at the end of the season. And they were trailing most of the set against Wayne State in set number 1, even though there were 10 ties. And Wayne State had set point at 24-23, but then Cal State LA rattled off the next 3 points to win set 1, 26-24. Wayne State took the second set 25-21, and they took the third set way more comfortably, 25-12. So I'm thinking, all right, well, Cal State LA had a very good run, but unfortunately I think Wayne State is going to derail them. But Cal State LA jumped out to a 10-0 lead in set 4, and they eventually took the 4th set 25-15. And then the 5th set, Wayne State jumped out to an early lead, but then Cal State, I think it was like a 4-1 lead, and then Cal State LA tied it up at 4-4, and then they pretty much led after that. And despite all of Wayne State's efforts to get within 2 points and then 1 point, Cal State LA eventually pulled away as they wound up winning the 5th set 15-12, upsetting Wayne State. I mean, I use the term upset very loosely because Cal State LA had 10 losses going in. I want to say they're the only team in the final 8 that had double-digit losses. I'll have to double-check that in regards to the 8 seed, but Cal State LA pulling that upset was darn right impressive, as Emily Elliott had 30 kills, and she had 441, and she had 15 digs to go along with that, and 2 service aces. I'm probably going to butcher this girl's name, but Ian Hankey had 15 kills to go along with 16 digs, and then Ashley Dittman had 13 kills to go along with 10 digs. Cal State LA hit 286 compared to Wayne State's 276, which wasn't bad. They outdug Wayne State 80-73. They also barely outblocked them 8-7, and the service battle was mainly won by it's either way. Cal State LA had 7 aces to Wayne State 6, but then Wayne State missed 4 serves fewer than Cal State LA. As Wayne State was led by Shatton T. Robles, who had 20 kills. Taya Beller had 16 kills. Maggie Brommer had 13 kills. And Kelsey Kata had 11 kills. By the way, if I'm mispronouncing these names, I definitely apologize. My semi-takeaway from this is I'm very surprised Cal State LA won this one, because Wayne State, if I recall correctly, they were in the top 10 throughout most of the NCAA Division II season. And I actually thought Wayne State was going to win it all, but Wayne State wound up falling short in the quarterfinals. But still a great season for Wayne State, and Nebraska is still a volleyball state. Next up, we had Missouri of St. Louis taking on Anderson of South Carolina. Missouri St. Louis was the 2 seed, while Anderson was the 7 seed. Anderson didn't look like a 7 seed as they took the first set 25-19, but then Missouri of St. Louis kind of kicked it into overdrive, winning set 2 25-20, and they wound up winning set 3 25-19, and then they wound up winning set 4 25-21, en route to winning the match altogether. Missouri of St. Louis, or the Tritons, were led by Lexi Rang, who had 23 kills, Delaney Hum, 16 kills, Haley Flowers, 10 kills, and Maya Elliott, 9 kills, as Missouri of St. Louis hit 240 compared to Anderson's 146. They also outdug them 79-73, even though they got outblocked 12-9. And also Anderson won the serve battle, but still, Missouri of St. Louis wound up winning the war. Anderson was led by Tabitha Wheeler, who had 15 kills, while Riley Sargent and Jalen Grimm both had 10 kills. In terms of digs, Lindsay McCurley had 19 digs, and Kylie Adams had 22 digs for Missouri of St. Louis. Unfortunately for Anderson of St. Louis, their hot start could not continue, as there's a reason why Missouri of St. Louis is the 2 seed. They actually have one loss altogether. One loss. By the way, all these matches were played at the UPMC Event Center in Moon Township, Pennsylvania. So it was a neutral site, no one had home court advantage and whatnot. Next up, we had Clarion versus West Texas A&M, and I had a feeling West Texas A&M was going to be good, but what I didn't know at the time was they were the reigning champions. And they looked like reigning champions in this match as they swept Clarion. This was the only sweep of the Final 8 round, or the quarterfinals, as the Lady Buffs wound up winning the match 25-23, 25-16, and 25-18. They were led by Tori Miller, who had 12 kills, while Carly Evitz had 9 kills. West Texas A&M hit 356 while holding Clarion to 274. The Lady Buffs did get outdug by 5, 45-40, but they barely won the block battle 7-6, and they won the ace battle, or the serving battle, 5-1 in terms of aces, and both teams missed 4 serves. Cassidy Snyder led Clarion with 16 kills, while Julia Piccolino had 15 kills. Normally when you have players in those numbers in a 3-set match, you're at least kind of in it, but it just seemed like Clarion wasn't. Clarion. Clarion, I thought it was Clarion, but the I looked like an L, but regardless, West Texas A&M pulled out the win, and Clarion's season is unfortunately over. But that's just how it is when it comes to facing the reigning champion. And then the last matchup we had was top-seeded Tampa taking on Bentley. And this was kind of... I know Tampa is good, because a couple seasons ago, Tampa wound up winning the NCAA Division II championship. And then Tampa was the number 1 overall seed, as they too have only one loss, which was suffered in conference play. Tampa took the first set 25-16, but then Bentley rallied back to take the second set 26-24 in close fashion. But then after that, it was all Tampa as they won set 3 and 4, 25-14 and 25-13 respectively, as Tampa was led by Natalie Perez, who had 14 kills. She hit 355, while Tess Strenger and Callie Kors both had 12 kills. Bentley was led by Rachel Vitko, who had 15 kills, while Ellie Wheeler had 9 kills. Unfortunately, this was kind of the expected 1 versus 8 matchup, but Tampa, I will say, they are a juggernaut in NCAA Division II women's volleyball. And this kind of makes me wonder if they're ever going to get brought up to Division I. But what home would you put them in? Heck, maybe you could move Cal State LA up to Division I and maybe have them play in the Pac-12. I'm just kidding. That's never going to happen. Anyway, so off to the NCAA Division II women's semifinals as Cal State LA took on Missouri of St. Louis, and I'm going to say this was not really as close as I thought it was going to be. Cal State LA swept Missouri of St. Louis 25-21, 25-21, and 25-17. I will say my takeaway is this. For being a team with one loss, Missouri of St. Louis really ran into a buzzsaw. I know Cal State LA was playing some of their best volleyball, and they even took down Cal State San Bernardino, but I was very surprised Missouri kind of got taken to the shed in this match, as the Golden Eagles were led by Emily Elliott, who had 19 kills. She had 366, while Ian Hankey and Ashley Dittman both had 10 kills. The team hit 364, and even though they got outdug 50-38, that's probably because of their offensive output. I also got to give credit to Eliza Cannon. She had 39 assists. I want to say she's actually a bounce back. I think I'm not sure if this is entirely true, but I want to say she played Division I and then went to Division II. Don't quote me on that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I remember because she has a twin sister, Grace Cannon, and she played at Utah and then eventually played at UC San Diego, but I digress. Missouri of St. Louis was led by Lexi Rang, who had 17 kills, while Delaney Hum added 11 kills. My takeaway for this is for Missouri of St. Louis is they got outblocked big time. You know how Stanford got outblocked by Texas? Well, Cal State LA kind of did the same thing with Missouri of St. Louis. Cal State LA outblocked Missouri of St. Louis 14-3. And even though Missouri of St. Louis only missed 2 serves, Cal State LA had 7 aces, 4 of which came from Emily Elliott. So Emily Elliott is kind of that it girl. So moving on to the other Division II semifinal, we had West Texas A&M versus Tampa, and this was a thriller. West Texas A&M took the first set 25-19, and I was thinking, it's top seed versus reigning champion. Something's got to give here. Then the second set, Tampa almost fell behind 0-2 in the match, but they took the second set 25-23. Then they took the third set 25-19. And at that point, it was looking like Tampa had gotten control. Then in set 4, Tampa was up 18-10, and I'm thinking, well, Tampa, it's gonna be Tampa versus Cal State LA in the NCAA Division II final. Eventually, Tampa had match point at 24-20, and everyone was probably thinking, oh, this one's over, right? If you're a West Texas A&M fan, it's never over. West Texas A&M dodged 4 match points. They tied it up at 24 apiece, but it gets better. They needed 5 set points of their own, and they also dodged 6 more match points from Tampa, and they eventually took the fourth set 36-34. Basically, West Texas A&M trailed by as many as 8. They had to dodge 10 match points, and even though they needed 5 set points of their own, they stayed alive and kept their season going. I was just speechless right there. It's like, no way. And to quote the infamous Chris Jeter McGee, "It is alive! My Lantis!" And then West Texas A&M jumped out to an early lead in set 5, only to see Tampa ride away for the most part in that 5th set with the lead. West Texas A&M did everything they could, and eventually it was tied up at, I want to say it was like 12-12, and then Tampa wound up winning the next 2 points, winning or going up 14-12, and it looked like at that point the match was over. It looked like Tampa was about ready to put the Lady Buffs in the coffin, except West Texas A&M dodged 2 match points in that 5th set. They tied it up at 14 apiece, and then they took the lead at 15-14, and then eventually West Texas A&M wound up winning the match off of a kill off the block, winning set 5, 16-14. So, recapping what happened in that 5th set, in a nutshell, West Texas A&M was down 14-12, and they wound up winning the next 4 points, which included winning or dodging 2 match points. So altogether, West Texas A&M dodged 12 match points in that match. And remember, they wound up winning that extended 4th set. and they needed overtime to win set 5. So I was just in utter shock. I was like, oh my god. And every volleyball personality needed to see that match. Whether it's via the stats, whether it's via the live stream, they needed to know of this match. And I had to make sure everyone was involved. Whether it was 6 rotations with Daniel Gilman and Nick Haley, Emily Eamon, Lincoln R. Neal, I needed to let everybody that was a volleyball friend on X know about this. Because this was downright impressive. West Texas A&M, not the Aggies of Texas A&M, the Lady Buffs of West Texas A&M, they had the match of the night. And this just goes to show that NCAA Division II volleyball is volleyball. Anyway, so the Lady Buffs were led by Tori Miller, who had 28 kills. Emma Becker had 16 kills. And Carney Jones had 10 kills. The digs were high by both teams. Tampa had 98 digs, and West Texas A&M had 95. That's pretty much on Big Ten levels in terms of digs. West Texas A&M also only missed 3 serves the entire match. When you're only missing 3 serves the entire match, you deserve to win. And then Tampa and West Texas A&M both had 8 blocks. While Tampa was led, they had 5 different players with 10-plus kills, as Natalie Perez had 19 kills, while Tess Schrenger had 18 kills. Mackenzie Dufresne had 12 kills, while Callie Kors and Jenna Vasky also both had 11 kills. Even though Tampa hit 232 compared to West Texas A&M's 213, West Texas A&M had a lot in their bag. And to quote Chris Jeter McGee again, Mylantis! It was just a big win for West Texas A&M as they advanced to the NCAA Division II National Championship, where they took on Cal State LA. So it was basically the comeback / cardiac queens versus the unranked underdog in Cal State LA. The Golden Eagles of Cal State LA took the first set 25-23. They actually were leading most of the set, and then West Texas A&M almost came back. They got within 1, and I'm like, uh-oh, it's danger time for Cal State LA. And I was thinking, if West Texas A&M takes this first set, they're winning the match. They're going to set the tone from this. They're going to have the momentum going into the rest of the match, and it would have been huge. But Cal State LA nearly won that first set. And then they also dominated set 2 for the most part. They never trailed, and they wound up winning that 25-16. So now West Texas A&M is backed into a corner. They have their backs against the wall, and they need to come up big. They did so in set 3 as they wound up winning it 25-22, although Cal State LA tried to make a little bit of a push. But then Cal State LA came alive and humming in that 4th set as they jumped out to a 10-point lead, which eventually I think went up to a 12-point lead. And they eventually wound up winning set 4 25-14, en route to winning their first ever NCAA Division II Women's Volleyball Championship. And one person that I thought of in regards to Cal State LA winning the NCAA Division II Women's Volleyball Championship, its first ever, by the way, was former set point guest Taylor Kushner. And I had to text her, how excited are you seeing Cal State LA win its first ever NCAA Women's Volleyball Division II National Championship? And she actually replied, so exciting, and she did remember me, which was awesome. And she said, it's an awesome thing for Juan and his program. Juan Figueroa, a former USC men's volleyball player, by the way. He's an amazing coach, and I coach club with him, so it's awesome to coach under him. So now those were the words of Taylor Kushner, the former Cal State LA women's volleyball player who is coaching on the junior college volleyball level at Mount San Jacinto. From what I remember. If not, I think she's coaching at Chaffey. It actually was Chaffey. I thought, yeah, it was Chaffey. It wasn't Mount San Jacinto. I think that's one of their rivals. Either way, it's been a while. Anyway, but Cal State LA winning its first ever national championship in women's volleyball. It's amazing. And honestly, it just goes to show that there's some talent in volleyball in California. I don't want to hear anyone else saying that the talent of volleyball is elsewhere. I'm just kidding. There's talent all over the place in terms of volleyball, in terms of the collegiate level and in the high school level. So all in all, for Cal State LA, it was an amazing win. For West Texas A&M, my takeaway is this. Unfortunately, they had one of those matches. The magic just was not there, but it does not take away from an amazing season that they had. Like, that win over Tampa is something that all volleyball fans and personalities should know of. It was super freaking duper amazing. And honestly, most teams that are trailing to the top seed in the semifinals would probably crumble and just run with their tails between their legs. But West Texas A&M had so much fight in them, and again, they dodged 10 match points. They were down 24-20, and again, they dodged 10 match points altogether in that fourth set. They took it 36-34, and I don't think we're ever going to see a semifinal like that. And everybody, I repeat, everybody needs to know of that. I had to tell every volleyball friend, and I basically was just absolutely astounded by the amazing effort that West Texas A&M had. You never want to doubt the heart of a champion, and honestly, I give West Texas A&M a set point salute on a fantastic season. But for Cal State LA, they won their first ever NCAA Division II Women's Volleyball National Championship, and I will just say, they went from unranked in the final AVCA coaches poll to being national champions. Never doubt anybody in the NCAA tournament, because when it comes to NCAA tournament time, everybody's 0-0 and all bets are off. I know NCAA Division II and Division III do it differently, as they have the final 8 and they realign everything, and they have like 8 regions as opposed to like 4 regions, but still, it's still really impressive if you ask me. So that's that for NCAA Division II women's volleyball. I wish I could have talked about it more, but when it comes to like Division I women's volleyball, there's just so much to talk about, and I don't want to like lose an audience. All right, but let's jump on over to some NCAA women's volleyball notable transfers. So some notable transfers include Whitney Lowenstein, yes, the former Nebraska player. Yes, if you all remember, she took time out of playing volleyball as she eventually quit playing on the Nebraska women's volleyball team. I'm sorry, Nebraska fans, I have to bring that up, because her father passed away, and she just needed a time to reset and refocus, and she also had an injury, and then she's now in the transfer portal. And then also today was Reagan Rutherford, and yesterday was Layla Blackwell of San Diego. She's now in the transfer portal, coming from San Diego, as well as Indiana. And then Reagan Rutherford is now in the transfer portal after completing an outstanding career at Kentucky, as she has one more year of eligibility following her tenured career with the Wildcats. That is huge right there. Someone's going to get a beast of a player in Whitney Lowenstein, as well as Reagan Rutherford and Layla Blackwell. But for other notable players that are in the transfer portal, we have Katrina Jensen of Boston College. She's an outside and opposite. And then also the setter from Boston College is in the transfer portal, as it is Grace Penn, I want to say. But anyway, back to Boston College and Katrina Jensen. She led Boston College with 283 kills, so whoever needs an outside or an opposite, they're going to get a pretty solid one, because she also helped Boston College win the NIVC last season. Then we also have Jordan Hopp from Iowa State, and I don't remember who else from Iowa State jumped into the transfer portal. I think there were like 2 more players that jumped in. But as for Jordan Hopp, she had 199 kills, which was good for being third on the team. And then she was actually first in blocking, as she had 104 blocks, which that's pretty good right there. And Hopp is a middle blocker. Then another big-time name in the transfer portal hits, as Angela Grieve from Miami of Florida hits the transfer portal, as Grieve led Miami with she was actually second in kills, as she had 280 kills, but she was the heartbeat of Miami's team. They're the reason why they even got to the tournament, and they even got past the first round. And then one player that I know personally, Meg Brown of Pepperdine, she's in the transfer portal. She's actually a big-time player, and whoever lands her, I know I say this for a lot of players, but they're actually going to get a beast of a middle blocker. As Meg Brown had 230 kills, she hit 345, and she also had 80 blocks to lead Pepperdine this past season. So I really think that Meg Brown is going to do wonders for a team that needs a middle blocker. And I'm not just saying that because I saw Meg Brown back in her days at Mater Dei. And then Maddie Walk, a setter for LSU, she's now in the transfer portal. She's actually a junior. Most of those players that I just mentioned were actually grad students. But this time, Maddie Walk, the setter for LSU, she is in the transfer portal, as she had 801 assists for LSU, and she was also second on the team in service aces, which is pretty good. And she also had 210 digs, which was second on the team. Good for second on the team. That's a big loss for LSU, though. They lose their starting setter, and maybe it's because they had expectations, and they had a lot of good players on this year's team. I thought they were at least going to make some noise in the SEC, but they wound up going out with a whimper and a whisper instead of a bang. But I digress. Then also we have Victoria Walgren of Utah that is in the transfer portal. She's actually the setter for Utah, as she is a junior, so that's kind of surprising. And KJ Burgess is also in the transfer portal from Utah as well. But Victoria Walgren had 1,004 kills, which is pretty good, and she also led Utah in aces with 138, which also was pretty solid as well. And she was third in digs with 180. And this big name is also in the transfer portal. Mackenzie Morris, she comes from Kansas State, and she doesn't really need an introduction. I want to say she led the entire NCAA Division I in digs per set, which is straight up phenomenal. And any team that needs a libero is going to get a beast of a libero. And oh my goodness, I could see her fitting on any team that's in dire need of a libero. Maybe even Oregon. And then just to basically give the exact number, Mackenzie Morris had 468. Now imagine what could have been had Kansas State made the NCAA tournament. Remember, Kansas State was one of the few teams that got left out as the first 8 out of the NCAA tournament. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Next up, coming from Indiana, we have Savannah Caholhede. If I mispronounced that, I definitely apologize. Just like Mackenzie Morris, Savannah is also a grad student. She's a middle blocker coming from Indiana, as Savannah was fourth in kills. She had 216, but she made up for that in the blocking department with 117 blocks, which led the team in that category. So again, another team. If a team needs a middle blocker, you got to go with her or Layla Blackwell. And then Reagan Rutherford and Whitney Launstein are both great offensive options for the left or right side. So there's your notable transfer news. That's not all of the transfer news that's going to be happening. There's going to be more transfer news, especially after the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament, because the transfer portal is officially open for business. All right, but that is that for the NCAA Women's Volleyball transfer news. Let's jump on over to some professional volleyball, as the Pro Volleyball Federation had their draft. And I gotta say, I wish they had televised this draft, or at least live streamed this draft. If not, I wish they could have live tweeted this draft out a little bit more consistently for the people on Twitter. Yes, I know, or X instead of Twitter, it's not as popular as Instagram, but go pick by pick. What Pro Volleyball Federation did was they tweeted the number 1 overall pick, and then that was that. Then they said the list is coming out soon, and we had to wait quite a bit. And eventually it was posted to Instagram. But not all of us are Instagram savvy folks, so I really think with this inaugural draft, Pro Volleyball Federation kind of let the ball drop on this one. I really think they should have at least live streamed it on Instagram or on X. I know they can't do that on YouTube just because you need to have a certain number of subscribers in order to do so. As I think you need 1,000 subscribers to live stream, but I digress. Anyway, so the first round, with the first overall pick of the Pro Volleyball Federation draft, the Columbus Fury select Asia O'Neal from University of Texas. Then we had the San Diego Mojo, Asia O'Neal, middle blocker from University of Texas. Then with the second pick in the 2023 Pro Volleyball Federation draft, the San Diego Mojo select Magda Yalashrava, middle blocker from Washington State, which eventually got traded, by the way. With the third overall pick in the 2023 Pro Volleyball Federation draft, the Las Vegas Thrill, or Vegas Thrill, select Hannah Pukis, setter from Oregon. With the fourth pick in the 2023 Pro Volleyball Federation draft, the Grand Rapids Rise select Morgan Fingal, opposite from Tennessee. With the fifth pick in the 2023 Pro Volleyball Federation draft, the Orlando Valkyries select Paige Briggs, outside hitter from Western Kentucky. With the sixth overall pick in the 2023 Pro Volleyball Federation draft, the Atlanta Vibes select Chiamaka Nokolo, middle blocker from Pitt. And with the seventh pick in the 2023 Pro Volleyball Federation draft, the Omaha Supernovas select Amber Igiti, middle blocker from Hawaii. All right, let's go over the draft in the actual voice and not the Adam Silver voice. So, second overall pick, Omaha Supernovas with the eighth pick went with Jill Gillen from Arkansas. Then the Atlanta Vibe with the ninth pick, they selected Whitney Bower from BYU. Then the Orlando Valkyries selected Georgia Murphy from Oregon. Grand Rapids Rise selected Sydney Bolding from Kansas State. The 11th overall pick, that's nice. Then the Vegas Thrill with the 12th pick, they selected Gabby Gonzalez from Oregon / Ohio State. Then with the 13th pick, the San Diego Mojo selected Temi Thomas Ilara from Wisconsin and Northwestern. And the Columbus Fury with the 14th pick went with Reagan Cooper of Kansas. And then the Columbus Fury with the 15th pick selected Kendall Kipp from Stanford. Then with the 16th pick, the San Diego Mojo went with Morgan Lewis of Oregon. 17th pick, Vegas Thrill went with Kylie Murr of Minnesota. 18th pick, Grand Rapids Rise went with Kenna Sauer of Houston. I think of Texas A&M too, but I digress. 19th pick, Orlando Valkyries went with Azani Teeler of Kentucky. 20th pick, Atlanta Vibe went with Camille Hayapo of BYU and Arizona. And then the Omaha Supernovas with the 21st pick went with Abby Hansen of UCF, which eventually was traded to Houston, or which was eventually traded to Orlando afterward. Then the Omaha Supernovas with the 22nd pick went with Maggie Cartwright of Arkansas. Then the Atlanta Vibe with the 23rd pick went with Cara McGee of Oregon and Baylor. Then the Omaha Supernovas went with Sophie Davis of James Madison. Grand Rapids Rise went with Emma Clothier of SMU and Florida State. With the 26th pick, the Vegas Thrill went with Hannah Maddox of South Alabama. Then with the 27th pick, the San Diego Mojo went with Carson Bacon of Oregon. Then the Columbus Fury with the 28th pick went with Janasia Moore of Tennessee. Then in the 5th round, we had the Columbus Fury going with Emma Monks out of Pitt and Michigan State. The San Diego Mojo went with Zoe Wetherington of Penn State. The Vegas Thrill went with Maddie Skemmerhorn of Purdue. The Grand Rapids Rise went with Carly Basham of Washington State. The Orlando Valkyries with the 33rd pick after the 32nd pick went with Kalia Williams of USC. The 34th pick went to the Atlanta Vibe as they selected May Pertovsky of Washington. And with the final pick, the 35th pick of the Pro Volleyball Federation draft, the Omaha Supernovas went with Kyla Swanson of Auburn. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your 2023 Pro Volleyball Federation draft. The inaugural draft from the Pro Volleyball Federation. Again, I wish they could have done a whole lot better with this in terms of like promoting it. They could have said 2 more sleeps until the Pro Volleyball Federation draft, and then they could have said tomorrow's the day of the Pro Volleyball Federation draft, had some interviews, and then they could have said leading up to the day is here. Pro Volleyball Federation draft is going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, which was 7 a.m. Pacific Time. Even I kind of forgot, which really frustrated me. And again, but as Patty Bax popped into the chat room, she said, better late than never. Thank you, Patty, for popping in. But I will also just say, again, Pro Volleyball Federation could have had at least someone tweeting out the picks. Like, as someone who is the analyst and the semi-reporter for the National Volleyball Association, the NVA, I will say they got to have, like, an Adrian Wojnarowski or a Ian Rappaport type of person to break the news, saying, this is breaking news. Pro Volleyball Federation is going to have this, or this team is going to draft this player, and so on and so forth. They got to have that type of person. I know no league is perfect, just because there are going to be some holes in terms of the league. But honestly, it is what it is, and it's up to that said league to try to patch it up. Oh, also, I guess I should mention one more college volleyball transfer before I move on to the next topic. Ellie Bolton is in the transfer portal from Creighton. There's that right there. All right, but that is that for the Pro Volleyball Federation draft. Before we head on into the NCAA Women's Volleyball Final Four, there is actually more news. Yes, more news. Y'all thought all the volleyball news was gotten out of the way, but I lied. There isn't any. There's still more volleyball news. So this actually comes from the other Pro Volleyball Women's League, from League One Volleyball, as they actually announced a partnership with USA Volleyball, as they are set to launch a Pro Volleyball League in the United States, starting out in November of 2024. And it says the partnership will help grow volleyball's fan base and participation. Basically, another pro league will be happening in women's volleyball next calendar year, which I think is pretty solid. And I think it's really good because LOVB is getting all sorts of these big names from like USA Volleyball that's going to be partaking. And that's pretty awesome. And you also got to remember that this is going to be launching after the Paris Olympic Games. So now we're going to be getting these Olympic stars playing in their hometown in the United States, where they don't have to basically go overseas, which I think is pretty cool. As Jamie Davis said, currently most of the top U.S. players compete in leagues overseas for up to 7 months a year, away from their families, friends, and the American audience. We look forward to watching U.S. players compete with LOVB on their home turf and seeing the impact that this league will have on volleyball's popularity. I think this is good just because, well, for starters, it's another pro volleyball league. And basically, even though there won't be League One volleyball after that, it's basically going to be, you're going to get another volleyball fix. Because you got to remember, Pro Volleyball Federation starts in January and is going to end somewhere near the middle of May, if not in the middle of May. And then you'll have the NCAA women's volleyball season. I know you'll have June and July and half of August to wait. But once the second half of August hits and late August hits, then basically you'll have NCAA women's volleyball. And then as conference tournaments are happening, League One volleyball is going to be happening, along with the NCAA tournament. So there's going to be a lot of NCAA, or a lot of volleyball in general, happening in the fall. And then you also have the NVA as well, but that's not women's volleyball. That's men's volleyball. But it's still professional volleyball in the United States, so don't judge. Yes, it's only a matter of time before the NVA starts up as well. I hear there's going to be some events happening up to in December, but don't quote me on that. All right, but that is going to do it for all the Pro Volleyball League news. League One Volleyball, I think it's going to be growing just as much. And there may be a little bit of rivalry between Pro Volleyball Federation and League One Volleyball. So time will tell. As I want to say, League One Volleyball has announced their full roster of volleyball leagues. And I think it's pretty good if you ask me, because they just recently announced Austin. They also have Madison, and the list goes on, and I can't wait to see what's going to be happening. They also have Omaha, Salt Lake, and that's pretty much that, unless I'm missing something. I really also need to brush up. I also am going to need to brush up on my League One volleyball, and hopefully I'm able to get like media passes, because they actually only have 4 teams: Austin, Madison, Salt Lake, and Omaha. So I imagine they're going to be getting more teams as the days go by. But I thought they had like more teams on the horizon. I thought they had like a team from Atlanta coming in, but maybe I'm wrong. All right, but that is going to do it for all the Pro Volleyball League news. Now let's jump back into the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division I side of things. So your semifinals, which will be televised on ESPN, starting with Pitt, Nebraska at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then after that will be Wisconsin, Texas, 30 minutes after the match between Pitt and Nebraska. So my preview for Pitt versus Nebraska. And unfortunately, I will not be going to the AVCA convention. I really want to go, but sadly, it's not going to happen. And I'm just going to have to miss out again. I really want to. One day I will be going to an AVCA convention, and I will be finding ways to grow set point, because that's going to be my lifelong goal. I really want to go to an AVCA convention to like experience the fan experience, because my buddy Daniel Gilman, former set point guest and host of 6 Rotations, is going to be there, along with the legendary Mick Haley and his co-host, by the way. They're going to be there. All the volleyball personalities are going to be there. Everyone's going to be there except for me, which makes me sad. But it's so much money. You got to invest so much money in this. You got to pay for play, unless you live in the certain place. You have to pay for flight. You have to pay for hotel and booking. And you have to pay for the AVCA convention. Then you have to pay for your tickets for the Final Four and the National Championship. You're going to be pouring in a lot of money. So unless you're able to take out a big lump sum or you win the lottery, you're going to have to invest a lot of money in this. But it is what it is, and hopefully one day I will attend one. That's going to be my bucket list goal, to attend an NCAA Women's Volleyball National Championship in the near future, and I think it'll do. I think it'll do. Next year, it's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky, which could be a little, I wouldn't say impossible, but I don't think it's impossible, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that. And then in 2025, the city is going to be in Kansas City, which is going to be the next site for the NCAA Women's Volleyball Final Four and National Championship. But at the very least, I will be going to the NCAA Men's Volleyball Final Four, or the tournament in Long Beach this year. That is something I am not missing, even if it means I gotta be poor and not work part-time. But all in all, that's that right there for the AVCA convention. All right, but for the Final Four, Pitt versus Nebraska. All right. Pitt has had such a fantastic year. Both teams have had a fantastic year. And the scary thing is that both these teams are going to be back. Nebraska has so many talented freshmen on their team. And they also have Merritt freaking Beeson. She has done wonders ever since transferring from Florida. Meanwhile, you have Pitt, who has Tori Stafford and Olivia Babcock. I will just say, this is going to be an intense semifinal. I would not be surprised if Pitt gave Nebraska everything it could handle. If Pitt serves the way that they did, and if they can break down Nebraska's passing like Arkansas did, I think Pitt has a realistic and very good chance. But at the same time, Nebraska has been a juggernaut, and the fact that Pitt needed a reverse sweep to basically win, and they kind of dropped a set against USC, even though Paul Sunderland said you have to win 3 sets, not 2 or 1. It's basically they have to face the Dragon in Nebraska, and I'm picking Nebraska to win this one just because Nebraska just does everything correctly. They block really well. They sprawl all over the floor defensively in terms of digging the ball. They have so many talented hitters, Marin Beeson and Bergen Riley. It's not fair for opposing teams. They are just unfair for opposing teams. And I would not be surprised if Nebraska wound up winning. The only thing I will be surprised is if Nebraska wins in straight sets. And if that happens, then Nebraska is unreal and they are insane and they basically are playing on a whole other level. But for the time being, I got Nebraska winning. And I just don't see Nebraska slowing down for anybody. I think that train is eventually going to reach the end of the line, but that is going to be at their host destination or the destination that they want. And it's nothing against Pitt. I think Pitt has done fantastic wonders, and I think it would be awesome to see Pitt in the national championship game. But Nebraska has, like I said, Merritt Beeson. They have Harper Murray. Bergen Riley has done an outstanding job setting this offense. And like I said, Harper Murray, she has really flourished. Allie Batenhorst also flourished. Andy Jackson also flourished. Becca Alec also flourished. Lexi Rodriguez, a digging dynamo. There's not too many weaknesses on this team. And heck, Lainey Choboy is also underrated as well. So Pitt's going to have to really bring their A game. They're going to have to play just as perfect as they did against Washington State. And in the third, fourth, and fifth set against Louisville. And then as for Wisconsin, Texas. All right, this is. I only have 6 minutes before we have to go live. Or we have to get off live. I have to get off for the next show on IE Sports Radio. But for Wisconsin, Texas. All right, Texas has done an outstanding job defending their crown. And again, it just goes to show you never want to underestimate the heart of a champion. Maddie Skinner is a fantastic, fantastic talent, unmatched. She literally was Superwoman in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 match. She's going to have to go up against really talented blockers, such as Anna Smrek, also Sarah Franklin, Carter Booth. I forgot to mention her. She also is done wonders for Wisconsin's team after she transferred from Minnesota. And Frank the Tank, Sarah Franklin, has just really been amazing for Wisconsin. And if you all remember correctly, Sarah Franklin was this close to not being able to play volleyball ever again. But now she was the Big Ten Player of the Year, and now she has her team 2 wins away from the national championship. Also, Temi Thomas-Ilara is amazing. Izzy Ashburn is setting the offense really well. I'm probably going to butcher her first name, but Gulsi Gushtikin, she also serves really well. If she gets hot from the service line, you can kiss your win goodbye. But what do I think of this matchup? I'm going to say Wisconsin wins it. Wisconsin wins, but I would not be surprised if Texas pushed them to 5. I will say this one's probably going to be decided on defense with blocking and digging and everything. I just think Wisconsin has the experience, which would mean my national championship match is Nebraska versus Wisconsin. And barring any upsets, I will say I got Nebraska winning the whole thing. I'm still going to stick with my prediction. Now, here's the thing. If Wisconsin does get upset, it would be Pitt versus Wisconsin or Pitt versus Texas. I'd have to realign my picks. But for the time being, I got Nebraska winning it all, and that's not going to change just because Nebraska has just been excellente all season long. And again, I just don't see this train stopping for anybody. The only way I see it is if Pitt just really serves tough, or if Wisconsin really gives them fits in terms of shutting down their offense. But Wisconsin they have to get past of sizzling hot Texas first. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It's time to drop the beat, as I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to Patty Bax, Adam Karnick, David Crooks, Mike Pat, and Mikey Two Guns in the chat room. I really do appreciate y'all. There will be a show next week, as it will be on its regular time. There won't be any jobs slowing me down. The week after, I'm not sure, but time will tell. But until then, have yourself a great rest of the evening. Enjoy the volleyball action. We got a lot of 3 volleyball matches this weekend. And remember, that national championship match is going to be on ABC. And it's going to be on Sunday at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And if you're going to the semifinals, check out the AVCA convention. And please be nice to Daniel Gilman and McKaylee. Otherwise, I will find out. But until then, have yourself a great rest of the evening, and let's end off the NCAA Women's Volleyball season with a bang. Peace! Also, see y'all on Saturday for the SoCal Spring Sports Show. Probably going to be most likely for me to do that.